The easiest way to work with image planes is to create a physical 3D object, texture the object, and have some sort of control over the selectability and visibility of the object. So we'll go ahead and go to our Create panel, Plane, and just draw our plane within the view. Now, in the end, you're going to want your aspect ratio of your plane to match the aspect ratio of your image. And also, you're going to want to make sure that you don't have any divisions on your plane, because it can become problemsome when you're trying to work and you have these lines in front of your texture. It can become quite distracting. So one thing that I'll make sure to do now is change my length and width segments, and we'll look at how to change our length and width attributes afterwards within our parameter view, within the parameters of our parametric plane modifier. So here we'll go ahead and just make sure we change the name of our object, Jin to the name of our character, front, reference. So we just named this. And now we can create our material. We'll hit M to create the material. And here we have our slate manager. You can use the slate or compact managers, whichever you're most comfortable with. In this case, we'll use slate. And, what we'll need is a standard material, and we'll name our material. We'll have access to all of our parameters by double-clicking on the node, and then we'll change the name of the material. We'll just go Jin front material. So with that set up, we need to select the appropriate texture for our diffuse color. We can do this within the Maps section by selecting None here, selecting the bitmap, and selecting the correct image, and now we have our image assigned to our object. We can also have these from a previous session. We could have alternatively just grabbed the bitmap from here. So if we were to delete these nodes, bring in the bitmap, select the texture, and hit open, you can see if we knew exactly what we wanted, it was a little quicker to do it that way. So now that our texture is assigned to our material, we need to assign a material to our object. And we did that, and if we look at our object, you can see we don't have the texture visible within the viewport. Though, if we were to render this out, let's see, if we were to do, we'll do this right here. If we were to render this out, you can see that the texture is applied to the object, just not within the viewport. So in order to correct this, we can select the material and enable this flag right here, show shaded material in viewport. So with this selected and this pressed, we're now able to view our texture within our viewport. Now the next thing that we have to worry about is making sure that the aspect ratio of our plane matches the aspect ratio of our texture. Now this is an easy fix. So if we actually look at the image in a Explorer view, we can see that Windows will show us our dimensions on the bottom, 704 by 892. If you can't find this, you can also view it within any image editor, or if we right-click and preview our image, we can open our image in the Windows Photo Viewer. And while we're here, we can go to File Properties, and it will let us know not only the dimensions, but which section is which. And this is kind of useful, especially since Max has our length and width reversed than how it's labeled here. So 704 is the width, which would go on the bottom. 892 is the length, which would go on this top property here. So let's move all this over and just type in the correct aspect ratio. So for our width will be 704, enter, and then our height would be 892. Okay, so now our image plane our physical grid has the same aspect ratio as our texture, so now we won't have any sort of stretching on the image. So if we go ahead and see what this could have looked like if it didn't match, you see we get some distortion. So now we have a correct image that we're able to place wherever we need. Now, one thing you might be aware is the size of this. This is by units. This is a unit measurement, and if this image plane is too large or too small, we need to make sure that we have the ability to control that. So what we can do, let's say we needed half the size or grab a quarter of the size. We can do division within this editor. So we'll just hit divide by 4, hit enter. Now this is a fourth of the size. We'll do divide by 4 here. So now we still have the correct proportions, and now we're working within the units that we desired. If you wanted to have a larger number, you could calculate. You can do the calculation on a calculator to punch in the correct aspect ratio afterwards. But know that this is how you gain that sort of control. Now, if you want to have control over the selectability and visibility, we can do that on a layer. So with the object selected, we'll open up our layer manager. Here it is, and with the object selected, we'll click on this button, which will create a new layer with the GIN reference object in the layer, and we'll just name this GIN front reference. So now we have a layer that we can control the visibility and the selectability of our plane. Now there's an issue within Max when we freeze objects. There is an object property on all of our objects that tell our objects to be gray, which will override our materials. Now we have this image on our grid which we want to see, so what we'll do is right click and go to Object Properties and turn off this flag, Show Frozen in Gray. So now with that off, we can control the selectability of our object with our layer, and we can still see our texture, which is useful. And then if we need, we can also turn off the visibility within the layer as well. One thing to keep in mind, since this is a layer for our reference, we want to make sure that it's not the active layer, and we can do that by making sure that we don't have the checkbox on this layer. Okay. If we had the checkbox, any new objects we created would be within this layer, and that can get confusing. So essentially, this is our layer setup. Now, one thing that I want to make sure to point out, I did mention working with image planes and making sure that we don't have any divisions. So we can see what that would look like if I had extra divisions here. Just click and just drag. You can see now our grid is divided, and it can become distracting. It's not necessarily a huge problem. It can usually be fixed if we still have our parametric plane operator here, the modifier, but it's not a showstopper. So here's our image plane. It's a simple image plane setup.